In the rush of boarders streaming downstairs, Grandpa, if he intended to question Douglas further about the weird conversation, lost his opportunity. If dinner delayed an instant more, Grandma and the potatoes would develop simultaneous lumps. The boarders, laughing and talking at the table, Mr. Coberman, silent and sullen among them, were silenced when Grandfather cleared his throat. He talked politics a few minutes, and then shifted over into the intriguing topic of the recent popular deaths in the town, of the recent peculiar deaths in the town. "It's enough to make an old newspaper editor prick up his ears," he said, eyeing them all. "That young Miss Lawson lived across the ravine now. Found her dead 3 days ago for no reason. Just funny kinds of tattoos all over her, and a facial expression that would make Dante cringe. And that other young lady, what was her name? Whiteley. She disappeared and never did come back." "Well, them things happen all the time," said Mr. Briz, the garage mechanic, chewing. "Ever peek in a missing people's bureau file? It's that long," he illustrated. "Can't tell what happens to most of them." "Anyone want more dressing?" Grandma ladled liberal portions from the chicken's interior. Douglas watched, thinking about how the chicken had two kinds of guts, God-made and man-made. Well, how about 3 kinds of guts, eh? Why not? Conversation continued about the mysterious death of so-and-so, and oh yes, remember a week ago, Marion Barsoomian died of heart failure. Maybe that didn't connect up, or did it? You're crazy, forget it. Why talk about it at the dinner table, so? "Never can tell," said Mr. Briz. "Maybe we got a vampire in town." Mr. Coberman stopped eating. "In the year 1927, said Grandmother, "a vampire? Oh, go on now." "Sure," said Mr. Briz. "Kill 'em with silver bullets. Anything silver, for that matter. Vampires hate silver. I read it in a book somewhere. Sure I did." Douglas looked at Mr. Coberman, who ate with wooden knives and forks and carried only new copper pennies in his pocket. "It's poor judgment," said Grandpa, "to call anything by a name. We don't know what a hobgoblin or a vampire or a troll is. Could be lots of things. You can't heave them into categories with labels and say they'll act one way or another. That'd be silly. They're people. People who do things. Yes, that's the way to put it. People who do things." "Excuse me," said Mr. Coberman, who got up and went out for his evening walk to work. The stars, the moon, the wind, the clock ticking, and the chiming of the hours into dawn, the sun rising, and here it was, another morning, another day, and Mr. Coberman coming along the sidewalk from his night's work. Douglas stood off like a small mechanism, whirring and watching with careful, microscopic eyes. At noon, Grandma went to the store to buy groceries. As was his custom every day when Grandma was gone, Douglas yelled outside Mr. Coberman's door for a full 3 minutes. As usual, there was no response. The silence was horrible. He ran downstairs, got the pass key, a silver fork, and 3 pieces of colored glass he had saved from the shattered window. He fitted the key in the lock and swung the door slowly open. The room was in half light, the shades drawn. Mr. Coberman lay atop his bed covers in slumber clothes, breathing gently up and down. He didn't move. His face was motionless. "Hello, Mr. Coberman?" The colorless walls echoed the man's regular breathing. "Mr. Coberman, hello?" Bouncing a golf ball, Douglas advanced. He yelled. Still no answer. "Mr. Coberman!" Bending over Mr. Coberman, Douglas picked the tines of the silver fork in the sleeping man's face. Mr. Coberman winced. He twisted. He groaned bitterly. Response. Good. Swell. Douglas drew a piece of blue glass from his pocket. Looking through the blue glass fragment, he found himself in a blue room, in a blue world different from the world he knew, as different as was the red world. Blue furniture, blue bed, blue ceiling and walls, blue wooden eating utensils atop the blue bureau, and the sullen dark blue of Mr. Coberman's face and arms, his blue chest rising, falling also. Mr. Coberman's eyes were wide open, staring at him with hungry darkness. Douglas fell back, pulled the blue glass from his eyes. Mr. Coberman's eyes were shut. Blue glass again, open. Blue glass away, shut. Blue glass again, open. Away, shut. Funny, Douglas experimented, trembling. Through the glass, his eyes seemed to peer hungrily, avidly, through Mr. Coberman's closed lids. Without the blue glass, they seemed tightly shut, but it was the rest of Mr. Coverman's body. Mr. Coverman's bedclothes dissolved off him. The blue glass had something to do with it, or perhaps it was the clothes themselves just being on Mr. Coverman. Douglas cried out. He was looking through the wall of Mr. Coverman's stomach, right inside him. Mr. Coverman was solid, or nearly so anyway. There were strange shapes and sizes within him. Douglas must have stood, amazed, for 5 minutes, thinking about the blue worlds, the red worlds, the yellow worlds, side by side, living together like glass panes around the big white stair window. Side by side, the colored panes, the different worlds. Mr. Coverman had said so himself. So this was why the colored window had been broken. "Mr. Coverman, wake up!" No answer. "Mr. Coverman, where do you work at night? Mr. Coverman, where do you work?" A little breeze stirred the window shade. "In a red world, or a green world, or a yellow one, Mr. Coverman?" Over everything was a blue glass silence. "Wait there," said Douglas. He walked down to the kitchen, pulled open the great squeaking drawer, and picked out the sharpest, biggest knife. Very calmly, he walked into the hall, climbed back up the stairs again, opened the door to Mr. Coverman's room, went in and closed it, holding the sharp knife in one hand. Grandma was busy fingering a pie crust into a pan when Douglas entered the kitchen to place something on the table. "Grandma, what's this?" She glanced up briefly over her glasses. "I don't know." It was a square, like a box and elastic. It was bright orange in color. It had 4 square tubes, colored blue, attached to it. It smelled funny. "Ever see anything like it, Grandma?" "No." "That's what I thought." Douglas left it there, went from the kitchen. 5 minutes later, he returned with something else. "How about this?" He laid down a bright pink linked chain with a purple triangle at one end. "Don't bother me," said Grandma. "It's only a chain." Next time, he turned with 2 hands full. A ring, a square, a triangle, a pyramid, a rectangle, and other shapes. All of them were pliable, resilient, and looked as if they were made of gelatin. "This isn't all," said Douglas, putting them down. "There's more where this came from." Grandma said, "Yes, yes," in a far-off tone, very busy. "You were wrong, Grandma." "About what?" "About all people being the same inside." "Stop talking nonsense." "Where's my piggy bank?" "On the mantel where you left it." "Thanks." He tromped into the parlor, reached up for his piggy bank. Grandpa came home from the office at 5. "Grandpa, come upstairs." "Sure, son. Why?" "Something to show you. It's not nice, but it's interesting." Grandpa chuckled, followed his grandson's feet up to Mr. Coverman's room. "Grandma mustn't know about this. She wouldn't like it," said Douglas. He pushed the door wide open. "There." Grandfather gasped. Douglas remembered the next few hours, all the rest of his life. Standing over Mr. Coverman's naked body, the coroner and his assistants. Grandma downstairs asking somebody, "What's going on up there?" And Grandpa saying shakily, "I'll take Douglas away on a long vacation so he can forget this whole ghastly affair. Ghastly, ghastly affair." Douglas said, "Why should it be bad? I don't see anything bad. I don't feel bad." The coroner shivered and said, "Coverman's dead, all right." The assistant sweated. "Did you see those things in pans of water and in the wrapping paper?" "Oh, my God, yes, I saw them." "Christ!" The coroner bent over Mr. Coverman's body again. "This better be kept secret, boys. It wasn't murder. It was a mercy the boy acted. God knows what would have happened if he hadn't." Was Mr. Coverman a vampire? What was Mr. Coverman, a vampire, a monster? Maybe, I don't know, something not human. The coroner moved his hands deftly over the suture. Douglas was proud of his work. He'd gone to much trouble. He had watched grandmother carving and remembered, needle and thread and all. All in all, Mr. Coverman was as neat a job as any chicken ever popped into hell by Grandma. "I heard the boy say that Coverman lived, even after all those things were taken out of him." The coroner looked at the triangles and chains and pyramids floating in the pans of water. "Kept on living. God, did the boy say that?" "He did." "Then what did kill Coverman?" The coroner drew a few strands of sewing thread from their bedding. "This," he said. Sunlight blinked coldly off a half-revealed treasure trove. $6.70 worth of silver dimes inside Mr. Coberman's chest. "I think Douglas made a wise investment," said the coroner, sewing the flesh back up over the dressing quickly. And that is the end.